is the agenda for today, which is some sort of a quest list for this kind of an immersive talk that I'm trying to deliver. I will try to deliver. We'll start by talking about games, so just to get your kind of mind thinking in that direction. Then we'll talk about the process of gamification, and we will actually dive deeper into what the process of player-centered design is, and how it's similar and different to the customer-centered design process. And I'll try to wrap this whole thing with Bartol's player types, which is a very interesting classification of players in general. So let's look at games first and some facts about games. Because we all play games, I guess. How many of you have played games at some part of their life? Great. But there are some underlying principles that are embedded in the games that make them fun. And games actually are very, very old. That's one of the first games that's known to mankind. And it was found in Tutankhamun's tomb. It's dated 3,500 years BC. And it's actually a board game. So board games are like quite trendy right now. All people buy board games and gather to play together. At least many of our colleagues do so. But actually that's one of the first board games, and it's more than 5,000 years ago when it was created. And of course, game took all kind of directions from then. We have games like chess, tic-tac-toe, and coming into the digital age with the first game that was like video game introduced, the game of Pong. Games like Tetris and the massive multiplayer online role-playing games like that long abbreviation. And of course, games are even in social media. Like, I bet that half of the people, or actually half of the time people spend in Facebook is actually playing Farmville or any other social kind of game. So we're very familiar with games and how they work because they were introduced to us from a very early childhood to improve our dexterity, to make us more social with other kids. It's something that has been there for us together, and we don't really consider it something new. They're very, very familiar to us. And thus it's not really surprising that games and principles that are applied in games find their way in the business processes just because they're so familiar. Jimmy talked about habits earlier today. Games are habits. We play the game by habit. We don't really think about it. And that's how they find their way in the business process eventually, to enhance it and to make it more fun. Because that's what gamification is ultimately about. It's about making boring stuff more fun. And in order to learn more about the drivers that make games fun, I have this short intro, but before that I actually want to bust a few myths. And we're going to kind of play this kind of small game. I don't know if you have heard of the Entertainment Software Association, ESA. It's kind of like an association that aggregates statistics about games. And I have a few kind of myths that they busted with statistics, which are very interesting ones because it's really worth knowing those. And the first myth is that games are for teenagers. Of course, that's a busted myth because the average age of a gamer is 30 years old. And actually more than 70% of the gamers are above the age of 18. Another myth is that games are for men. Like, that's the usual thing. Oh no, games are for men, they won't work on the computer for women. They're not gonna enhance their work at all. Actually, women are 48 or 49% of all gamers, so they're just below the half of the gamers in total. It's almost a tie. And actually the fastest growing segment in gaming nowadays is women above the age of 18. And don't forget games like all the social games like Candy Crush, Farmville, and so on. That's the kind of games that women tend to play more compared to men that play more like kind of aggressive and violent games. But still women constitute a very, very large portion of the gamer society. And another myth, of course, is that games are not work. Games are fun. Work shouldn't be fun. And that's a totally wrong concept. Games actually are work. And to prove that, Do you know that actually an average World of Warcraft player spends 22 hours a week playing the game? It might be fun, it might not be work, but actually World of Warcraft has the second largest wiki on the internet after Wikipedia. And that's a wiki that was created by the players by their own will. They were voluntarily doing this work for no return, just to educate others. And that's a lot of work, as you can imagine, writing the second thing after Wikipedia. There's another game that I'm going to show in the examples, which is called Foldit. Has anyone heard of Foldit? Probably some of the, oh, some people have heard of it, great. It's actually a game that kind of solved an unsolvable scientific task. But I'm just going to tease you a bit for the rest of the presentation. I'm going to tell you more at the end. So what are the things that make games fun, and what are the very, very underlying principles that actually are valid for all games to make them fun? Not just for one game, but for all of the games. It's these four basic principles that you can see at the top. We have goals, we have rules, feedback, and voluntary participation. And those are the things that make games fun. So if we apply a combination of these four things together to a process that's otherwise cumbersome, boring, and so on, we can also make it more fun for the people. And goals, for example, I would actually like to use the example of Pong. That's actually the first video game, the first game of the digital age. I think it was built in 1980, 85 or 84, or maybe even before that. I know it was definitely before I was born, and many of you, I guess. So the whole concept of the goal in this game was that your goal was actually to hit the moving dot. You have the bar at the side that you control, and your goal is just to hit the ball. And usually the goal is to hit it more than your opponent in order to win. So that's actually the rule. If you're able to hit the ball in a way that your opponent misses it and it passes by him, it's a rule that gives a point to the other player, the one who took the last hit, the last shot. Another rule is, for example, that if you reach 3 points, you win the game, or the whole set, or whatever they call it, the level. And that's another type of rule that they had there. Feedback in Pong, in the original console, which was like probably the size of this part of the stage, was that actually you got feedback visually from moving the joystick and the corresponding movement of the bar. And at the same time, you also had this audio feedback from when the collision between the dot and the bar occurred. You had this like boom. I don't know, maybe that's why they call the game like that. But there's also the aspect of voluntary participation. And your players and users should really know that it's up to them to decide if they want to do it or not. And that's one of the key things that we tend to forget. We try to force gamification on everybody and force the process, but unless they see, or if they don't see the value of it, and if they're not really motivated by it, then we should leave them as they are without any gamification. It's not something that you force onto people. It has to be something that people really desire and see the value in. Okay, so let me share one other thing actually. I said 4, but there's actually a 5th thing, which is a bit different, and it's the concept of unnecessary obstacles. And that's what really makes the game fun. You all know the famous game of Snake, and it's a game that actually would be quite simple if the snake was just moving around the obstacles. But they decided to introduce this unnecessary obstacle that appeared at a certain point, which was an apple. An apple that gave you points after you ate it, but an apple that also made the snake longer, so it's more difficult to like navigate it afterwards. And with each apple the snake ate, it got longer and longer and longer, until you ultimately like hit an obstacle that was there from the beginning, or yourself, your tail or whatever, and the game ended basically. So introducing such unnecessary obstacles to repetitive tasks like the clicking of the 4 buttons really made this game fun. And it's the same example with Tetris, where the more bars or levels that we clear, the faster the tiles fall from the top. And this unnecessary complication of the game actually makes it more challenging and keeps us involved in the loop and playing it more and more and more. And actually, I don't know if you, for me, the most boring and repetitive thing that I would imagine is working in a storehouse and like all day moving boxes from one point to another and just like walking around. But that's actually the motivation behind the original Super Mario game. And Super Mario is probably one of the most successful games. And it was motivated by just making such a very boring and repetitive thing more fun for its players. So it's kind of a tricky thing because our brains in normal ordinary life, they work in a way to remove obstacles, to make everything more easy, to increase efficiency. And basically, by removing these obstacles, we actually remove the aspect of challenge and fun. Just because everything is the same every single time. So, let's go on and talk a bit more about gamification as a process. As a design approach, actually, and as a process. Gamification has one single purpose: to make the boring thing fun. And that's pretty much it. That's the goal of it. You all know these kind of cower fights. I've actually seen these 5K jogs in Bulgaria once a year. They have such a cower fight before the jogging, and then people run the 5K. And that's such an aspect that actually makes the run more fun, even though it's the same kind of, you make the same thing, you run for 5 kilometers, you make the same steps, you don't change your running. But just because you're covered in all the paint, it's somehow more involving for the people that participate. And we try to do the same thing. We try to do something that's really boring and cumbersome into something that really gets the people going. We already mentioned the concepts of goals, rules, feedback, and voluntary participation. But actually the most, or I would say the only key performance indicator when we evaluate the gamification experience is involvement. And that's what we measure, whether the users are more involved into the process than before. And that's the KPI for successful gamification. There are many things that come secondary. Many people have improved efficiency. They're more aware of the whole process. There are like many secondary things that come with it as well. But the primary thing that we actually strive for is better involvement and higher involvement. Of course, it's hard to measure, so gamification is definitely not an easy task, but there are many kind of aspects of the involvement of the people that we can qualitatively measure in terms of like subjective feedback and surveys, and also quantitatively measure. Things like, for example, time spent as like playing the gamified experience and so on. And here I'm not talking about gamifying websites or applications or whatever. This also applies to processes. So if you want to involve you actually want to enhance your normal business process, you can also put a level of gamification on top. Why I'm saying this on top thing? Because gamification is just the icing of the cake, or the icing of the cupcake. If your cupcake tastes like crap, the icing on top will not make it taste any better. And to make a good cupcake, you have to have a very good customer-centered design process. You have to really cater to the needs of the customer to design the cupcake well. But if you want to make it even more delicious, then you can take a layer of gamification on top and put like this icing that makes it something that's even more amazing than the cupcake itself. And that's why actually gamification and user experience design go hand in hand. They just work on a different level. And gamification is not something that can fix a bad process, but it's something that can make a good process better. And some of the things that actually gamification enhances kind of secondarily to the involvement are things like, for example, improving the learning curve. There are many ways that there was some sort of a gamified tutorial where actually a very, very boring process and boring tutorial was made more interesting, and actually learning is one of the things that you immediately gain a very good advantage in after you put gamification into it. There's also performance of users, efficiency, and of course retention in the end, because if you have this sort of gamification, people are less likely to leave to a competitor. So it's just the icing on top of the delicious muffin. And I want to talk about types of work, because I've been telling more, I don't know, maybe 10 times already, that it's about these cumbersome, boring, repetitive tasks that we do. So what could those tasks be? And I will now try to convince you that actually those tasks could be fun as well. We have high-stake work. It's good that in real life, most of us don't have to do such sort of work. It's basically a work that we do for a very high stake. In games, if you imagine a first-person shooter, the high stake is basically your life. You have to like fight all the zombies from the invasion, all the Nazis, all the aliens, doesn't really matter. You have to basically kill them all and save the world. And the high stake is that you're actually putting your life at stake, your digital life, of course. We have games that are some sort of a busy work, and these are kind of like very, very repetitive tasks. Like game of Candy Crush is just like moving tiles all day long. And if the tiles were like kind of, if there was no layer of gamification on that, it would be like the last thing to do. But actually trying to like arrange longer and longer blocks and gain more and more points, and the timer that's working against you, and so and so and so. Many game mechanics that are put in place make this task fun. And you might say, yeah, Candy Crush is a boring game, but it's the type of work that's better than doing nothing. So if you're waiting at a queue of, let's say, 50 people, you're probably gonna play Candy Crush anyways, because it's better than just staying there and like doing nothing and watching in a spot. There's of course this other type of games that involve mental work. Sudoku is a very typical example for it, or crosswords. That's where you have to really make your brain work hard to solve the whole puzzle. And it's just fun because you want to assemble the whole picture and basically complete it. Scrabble is the same thing. There are like many types of mental works that are part of games. We also have the physical work, which is not so popular, but if you happen to be very lucky today and win the Xbox One, you can buy a Kinect, you can attach it, and you can actually do physical work in games. I guess you all have seen like the people playing tennis by swinging their hands. I think also the Nintendo Wii has it with the accelerometers in the controller. Nintendo Wii has also this kind of mat where you step on different things to play some sort of more active games. But Kinect also does this. You can kick the ball in soccer, you can do tricks by jumping like skateboarding and stuff. So there's a lot of physical movement involved. And there's of course exploration. I don't know how many of you have played Diablo 2, but the thing that I had to do every single time was uncover the whole map. It didn't matter if I did the quest or not, I just had to like go to every single point of the map myself. That was my biggest motivator. And I really wanted to do that no matter what the quest was. It's the same with Heroes and all other kind of like role-playing games, many of them actually. And of course, games can also be about creative work. Creative work in terms of, for example, spending, what to come up with for creative work?
Minecraft.
Huh?
Minecraft,
yeah, it's kind of creative work. I have another example actually at the back of my head, which was the Championship Manager game. It's a game where you walk in the shoes of a soccer team manager, and you actually have to really think how to outsmart your opponent in order to win the game, like doing all the tactics and stuff. You're kind of like building this vision. Things don't always go according to your plans, but still you have to apply some sort of creativity in order to outsmart the opponent. But Minecraft is also a very, very good example for that. So one thing that I really want to stress is this present future. or future present. And why is that? Do you know the concept of digital natives? Those are basically all the people that were born after the inception of the internet. And currently those people are entering the workforce. They're 18, 20 years of age. These are people that grew with technology all around. They basically don't know the world without technology. And this gives us a big opportunity because on average, such a person from this digital native group has more than 10,000 hours in their lifetime spent in games, digital, online games, digital and online. And this gives us a huge advantage because if we are actually conscious today, not tomorrow, but today, and employ gamification in different processes, different tasks, and all kind of like normal stuff, we can really rely that those people will get it because they were basically bred with the concept of games and playing around with stuff. So we can take advantage of their familiarity with games and actually make them even better professionals. So I told you that I'm going to speak about the player-centered design process, and it's something that's very familiar with the customer-driven design and customer-centered design. And I'm going to try to stress on the deliverables of the process and actually what are the efforts that we do to make this process work for us. When it comes to gamification, the user is actually always the player. We don't talk about users anymore, like we leave them behind. We talk about players. And how could a player be different than a user? Well, we agree that gamification is not about fixing that process, it's about making them more fun. And we also agree that it's just the top layer of things. So we can also say that unlike usability that, for example, suffers from or actually monitors things like efficiency, performance, and all the indicators that we've heard earlier this morning, and many of you have probably heard before, here we're actually only looking into engagement. We want to know if our gamification engages the player more than the normal design does for the user. And that's it, engagement, and that's the only thing we're interested in. We can basically design some sort of processes around this to make the engagement better. And the way we design those processes and the kind of activities that we do are kind of the same ones as we do for user experience and user-centered design. We do brainstorming, of course. We do all kind of design thinking activities. We, of course, have to test some hypotheses and measure some indicators, which are different, but it's still the same sort of process that we do. And we eventually try to find the golden ratio that keeps our players engaged the most. So player-centered design, of course, is the best approach for gamifying a process or a system. There's no doubt in that. And that basically means that we have to take the player and put it in the middle of our decision making. There are a number of ways to do that. I'm going to talk about personas in a minute. But we really have to answer the question who our player is and what really motivates him into this exercise. We also have to think about the mission of the gamification because there are always some business goals involved. And we have to understand the desired outcome for the business, but also we have to know the user and the player actually better into what's the really motivating thing for him. We have to design the missions in the way that they're actually embracing the user in a way that he really feels the need to complete that mission. So let's talk about the game mechanics because it's really important to put the correct combination of game mechanics into place to have a successful gamification. And there are numerous. This is probably just 1/5 or maybe even 1/10 of the number of game mechanics that we have to employ, that we could employ, but they're just like a representative part of them that I decided to share. So for example, we have the concept of levels. Levels, for example, in games like Plants vs. Zombies, where you play for a certain time a given level, trying to survive the zombie attack, and that's how you proceed. There's the concept of leaderboards that you're probably all familiar with. Leaderboards in games like, even in Foursquare, we have this sort of a leaderboard which tells us if we have more points from check-ins than our friends. And also we have this kind of achievements. So, or actually I have quests first, but yeah, leaderboards and achievements go hand in hand. Achievement could be something as simple as being the mayor of the Sofia Event Center, for example, Foursquare. Quests are something very familiar for role-playing games, games like Diablo that I already mentioned, that basically give a quest for our character to kill some enemy or to go and explore or find something. And it's very interesting that many people tend to ignore progress bars, or actually showing the progress. I don't know if you're aware of the case study of LinkedIn, who introduced the progress bar for profile completion that was like 5 years ago. And they had the single goal to involve their users more. And they were measuring this involvement by the profile completion of the user and the amount of information that they had for each individual user. So after introducing this extremely simple game mechanic, they, on average, they got more than double the information that they had before that, just by this kind of tiny, simple, small thing. And badges are familiar to all of you, badges that we get in Farmville for contributing to their wiki, badges that we get on Foursquare for exploring certain areas. So I'm not going to speak about them that much, but there's also this kind of game mechanic of discovering and hiding things. I don't know if I already mentioned the game of Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2. That's the one that I played when I was a teenager. And it was a game that you could actually collect everything out there in the level to unlock a secret room at each individual level. And after you unlock all the rooms for all levels, you unlocked the moon or something like that. You could skate in the moon at lower gravity. It was like this kind of crazy thing. And just by the rumor that there's something hidden there if you collect everything, you really feel this need to discover everything and explore everything just to unveil a bit more from what's there in the game. There's also the concept of virality. If I ask for a show of hands of the people who played to 2048, I guess it's going to be like everyone, because it just got viral. People started playing it, they started sharing their scores on Facebook, and you felt like you had to beat that score, and basically went viral over the course of a few weeks or months maybe. So virality is another way to do game mechanics, and social sharing helps a lot for that. But social sharing, it's not the only kind of sharing that you can offer. Of course, it's all about sharing the experiences. If it's a game of World of Warcraft, where you create your own guild, and you can like share, you can even record a video of the game and share it in some special YouTube channels. I've seen that happening. There are even special YouTube equivalents only for sharing videos of people playing games. For me, that's like really boring. It's just some person clicking and speaking. But some people spend hours doing that and listening to that. So actually, giving people the opportunity to share their experience with playing the game, it's also a mechanic that motivates them more into being part of this gamification. One important thing to mention is that all these game mechanics that we have to put in place are something that we have to really monitor, measure, and of course manage correctly. Manage is probably the most important thing to do, because if we allow cheating, or if we make cheating possible, then of course it's going to destroy the experience of those players who are not fans of the cheating. So we have to be really careful with it, and we have to really manage how people try to basically cheat our game mechanics. At the same time, in order to estimate the engagement of the player with the system, we can measure things like time spent in a certain activity related to the gamification, or time that people need to complete a task, or just number of subjective measures that we can collect through feedback surveys about the satisfaction of the people with the overall experience. However, it's very important to define these goals that we set for the gamification as SMART goals. So they have to be very specific and concise. We have to be really aware of what exactly our goal is and what we should really improve. We should be able to measure them, of course. That's why we have these kind of measures for the involvement. they have to be attainable. We have to really make sure that people are able to reach to that goal or complete that task. Not something that's just like out of scope and goes on forever. They have to be relevant, of course, because if we're trying to like measure something irrelevant to the gamification, it wouldn't make any sense. And we have to time bound them. We have to like set a certain deadline. For example, if the user is not able to complete the task within 2 minutes, we just give him the next task. And we can ignore that data from the statistics in the end to see if the gamification was better. Or we usually shouldn't ignore it, but we can like take it in a different kind of statistical approach. Okay, so I promised to tell you about player personas, and that's the type of persona that we create for gamification. How many of you have done customer personas or user personas before? Okay, some of you, many of you. Okay. Actually, for gamification, we do a similar type of persona, which is persona of the player, and it's similar because you still have things like I don't know, general information about the person to know more about their background, but you also get some sort of pain points and aspirations that are also usually part of the user persona. But there are also many other things besides demographics and interests that we account for, and those are things that actually kind of motivate the player, and they're kind of related to the gamification more. It's one such thing, for example, is the thing that I promised and I'm talking yet. It's called Bartle's player type. You cannot see it well here, but actually that's something that you can already include in your player persona once that you know what's really the player persona about and what's the persona type for that. Because these 4 things actually that we're going to talk in a while give you an idea of what's the best motivator for that group of people and for that persona here. Another thing that we have to account, of course, for the player personas is their level of experience with the system. Is it a rookie that we have to onboard in the gamification by helping them understand it better and basically convert him to a regular kind of user? Once we do so, it's very important to try to build a habit. It's usually a habit that just makes the user come back and play the game or be part of the gamification experience again and again and again. And eventually, some of those people, of course, become masters of the games. And those are the people who, for example, create the wiki for the World of Warcraft. Those are the people who help the rookies become regular users. Those are the people who are kind of in the mood of giving something to those who are newer to the game and the gamification experience. And if we take a very, very specific example of this, I'm going to use another very old game, Heroes of Might and Magic. Once you started playing the game, you had these initial tutorials. So you were the rookie, you didn't know how to play, and you had tutorials with many tips and tricks, how to cover the map, when to attack an opponent, what interactions were out there. Then there was the campaign section. So campaigns were like these long sets of missions, which actually tried to make or to build a habit into you to play the game after you become a regular user from a rookie. And after you probably completed all the campaigns, there was a separate tool that came a little bit later, and that was a tool that allowed you to design your own map of Heroes, Might and Magic. So you got this map, you put places on it, it's like drag and drop kind of thingy, and you could share that map with friends, anyone could import it and play it. And that's when you become the master actually. You create content for the others. So, the last part of the talk, I really want to focus on Bartle's player types. I'm not going to go very deep into it because you can find a lot about it online. And there's also a small survey if you're curious to find out what kind of player you personally are. But that's like one of the very, very crucial things about gamification. So, Bartle's player types are four groups of people, basically, or 4 types of players, to be more precise. There are invented or defined by Richard Bartle. Actually, they're better than the guy's name. And what he did was distinguish between achievers. You can see that's about 10% of the population that are predominantly achievers. Those are people who want to be best at everything they do. They want to be top of the leaderboard, they want to earn a badge, they want to advance more and more and more and be like tapped on the shoulder for doing so. And that's what motivates them actually. Badges, leaderboards, and all sorts of such game mechanics. Then it's the exploration or the explorer type of player. That's again about 10% or so of the population. Those are the people that have to, like myself probably, uncover each single corner of the map that's out there on the game of Diablo. And that's what motivates them. They're just okay to do the same thing over and over and over again, as long as it uncovers something that they couldn't see before. Have you heard of the Easter egg hunt game? It's something that the Catholics do. They hide Easter eggs in a park, for example, and they tell the kids that the Easter rabbit hid all the eggs around. So they go there and like explore the whole park in order to find the Easter egg. And that's exactly this kind of like player here. We have the socializer, which is almost 80% or about 80% of the population. And those are the people that really want social elements in the games. If it's a game that they collect some resource, they have to be able to give that resource to a friend, or share something with a friend, or like games like Farmville is like the obvious example. It's not only about playing the game, it's about playing it with others and exchanging some sort of a game mechanic as the resource could be in the game. And there's this about 1% of the people which are called the killer player type. And those are the people, they're very, very similar to the achievers. They want to be top of the league, best of the best of the best. But that's not enough for them because they want to see others suffering misery. So they're this extremely highly competitive kind of person. I'm sure that each of you knows at least one such person, who are so competitive that it's not only about the win, but it's about seeing others lose. And it's okay to be like that. We actually tried to do such tests in our company with a few people. We were only 10, so our results were very skewed, but we had one killer. Okay, so something very important about these player types is that each of us combines all of them to some degree. We, of course, have a predominant player type. It could be, for example, the killer or the killer and the socializer, which doesn't actually make any sense. But we have one or two predominant player types. It's not that we're 100% killers. That's actually impossible. So we display certain features of one category and other features of another, but it's really important to account for this dominant category. And if you can have an aggregation of your users and know their player types, and if there is like a predominant category in the majority of users, then you know what the game mechanics that would work best for that audience. So that's why it's important to actually do that. And I'm going to share the slides so you can click on this link. That's hardly visible right now, but that's like a link, or you can just Google for it. That's actually an interactive test with questions that tells you your player type, if you're curious about it. So I promised to wrap up the whole discussion with a few examples, and that's the game Folded that I mentioned as a teaser in the beginning. It's actually a game that was developed by the University of Washington. That's Washington State, not DC, but I guess for the Americans it's kind of like irrelevant. So they had this very sophisticated algorithm to predict the protein folding, and they were working with the whole health industry to find new proteins that could be some sort of source for a new medicine, or basically in order to try to fight with diseases. And they had this very sophisticated algorithm, which was like a whole chunk of logic that was really hard to adjust and to improve. And this algorithm was basically trying to like randomly fold specific patterns until they actually found a potential cure for a specific disease. And they estimated that to fold a certain number of variants, it will take their supercomputer about 10 months or so. And they decided actually to spend that time and design a game that actually made people fold the proteins physically. Like you get this immersive game, and you're just like, okay, I'll put the protein there, or I'll put it there, and you see what's the outcome, and you learn from your mistakes, and you try again and again and again. And after they made this game, it was like an online game. Everybody could download it or play it online. After they released it, it took them 1 week, taking the accumulated power of all people who were involved in it, to solve the very same task that they had estimated for 10 months. And they're still using actually this game to further discover new potential proteins that could be some sort of cure to certain diseases. So gamification can also do good physically for humanity, and this is like a very concrete example for it. Another more fun or more kind of like easy to grasp example for gamification is the experience that those of you who got their tickets to Eventbrite had. You have something that is as simple as this timer for 8 minutes. It creates a sense of urgency that you have to take action to get the ticket. And that's also sort of a game mechanic, very simple one, but so simple that actually it works really well. And people complete much more quickly their task. So it's not like that thing stays there forever, kind of like booked in some intermediate state so that no one else can buy it. It's actually something that gives you this urgency, you either finish it or not, and that's it. Another example that I already mentioned was actually the LinkedIn profile completion bar. The outcome that they got was far beyond what they were hoping for, with something as simple as this. And I see more and more actually digital products having such sort of progress bars in one way or another to basically motivate their users and players to do a bit more, to go one step further. And there is actually another very interesting example, which is a game called Zombies Run. And that's actually, we had like a really amazing keynote in the morning about the Internet of Things. That's a game that you have for your smartphone. It's a game to gamify your jogging. So every time you slow down, you hear the zombies, and actually it's a really interesting game because it has this like 3D audio. So if you're wearing the headphones, you hear zombies behind you like, oh, and like getting louder and louder. And if you accelerate, their voices like go back to like the more quiet thing. But it's something that it's ridiculous, it's funny, but it's actually that can actually push you to take that further step and maybe prepare better for your next marathon or whatever you do. So actually gamification can even work in real life with this example and more examples that will be employed in all sorts of smartwatches and devices. And with that, actually, I would like to close the whole talk and wish you a lovely conference for the rest of the day. And of course, you can ask some questions if there are any. So thanks once again. People who like World of Warcraft. It's hard to say. They account actually for different kind of players with the leaderboards on one hand, with this kind of hiding the map that's still uncovered on the other for the explorers. Leaderboards work for achievers, work for killers. Usually games that are so massive, they can not really account for a specific type of player, they can account for all the diversity of player types. But games that are very, very, very specific to the point, or not so widespread, it might turn out that there's like a predominant player type that they really have to think about, or at least think first about those and then involve the others. So World of Warcraft, I would say that it kind of covers the whole thing, because we have different game mechanics for all 4 player types. We have also like the social sharing experience with the other players and so on.